Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The Wasteless World Talks are here again, this time only with Kevin and me. That will be very special. No, Bill is on holiday, so he will join us next week. But we will have a special topic today, and it is the sign of evolution or the signs of evolution. And I have similar discussion today in the Power of Touch at the noontime, and it's quite interesting. And let me ask you the first question. What do you think is the sign of evolution? I will specify later, but let me start with the same question.
I think there's two signs of evolution. One is the sign that evolution is happening, which is change. And the other is a sign that evolution is needed when nothing seems to change, but we're desperate to have some change.
Interesting answer. On the other hand, let me add one more question. What is the difference between let's put it a different way. How will you specify the sign this being different between evolution and revolution? Because some people are confused. They are putting both in one, but they are very different. So how do you recognize that we are not speaking about revolution, but evolution?
I think revolution is a break in a line. So evolutionary factors can put a lot of pressure onto something, and then we adapt to that pressure. But revolution applies so much pressure that there was a clean break. And then it's a question of picking up the pieces. And I think that's the reason so many revolutions fail, is because we don't have the continuity to be able to continue. We've changed direction, we've broken what's happened before, and we just don't have enough time to rebuild everything that we need to rebuild to make a revolution successful, which is why we tend to go back to old ways after a revolution.
It is quite interesting. You know also why I call Industry 5.0, or why I created it as a first industrial evolution, despite the name. It was because I live in a communist country, and I have spent a lot of learning about different revolutions. Started with the Russian one, of course, French, China, Vietnam, Cuba, many. So we spent a lot of time. And I realized, before I started with Industry 5.0, I realized that generally the revolution, as you call it, is the sudden change. So it's quite short. The other topic is that if you pay more to the soldiers, they will kill for you. If the other will pay more, they will kill for them. They don't care. It is just about the salary. And the last one, before I did so, I analyzed the length of industrial revolutions. And it's quite interesting because I find out that the 1 to 4, they are shorter and shorter, generally half the time of the previous one, or even less. The first one was, I think, 123 years, something like that. The second was 60, then was 30. And the Industry 4.0 was introduced unofficially in 2011. In Germany, I think it was in Munich or Nuremberg, I'm not sure, on an exhibition. But then it took 2 years to become official. So it is 2011 or 2013. I use 2013 usually. But in 2015, I already introduced Industry 5.0. So this last revolution was just for 2 years before something new is being recognized. And the question is, why so many tend to revolutions if we know that it's just a sudden break, that it does not work? And there was, I think, not a single revolution which generally, from a long-term perspective, worked. Because at the end, after the revolution, and this is, I think, the next difference to evolution, there are few very happy and wealthy, and the rest have to live in scarcity, and they have not enough, and so on and so on. But it was all the time the result of revolution.
So, yeah, and I think, excuse me, a lot of revolutions have the same pattern, that there's the original revolution, which may be idealistic and driven by ideology and desire for freedom, justice, whatever the drivers are. But that quickly gives way to a second phase, which is not counter-revolution, but almost it becomes, the revolution itself becomes extremely exaggerated. So you have the original creators of the revolution, the original revolutionaries, and then the next phase is is run by the enforcers. So these are the people that support the revolution for revolution's sake, rather than for more ideology. So it quickly collapses in on itself because it loses its initial creative energy, and then is taken over and suppressed by those who come after it, which are more fundamentalist.
So we can say, if I will simplify it a lot, we can say that the revolution is violence and the evolution is the harmony.
It's revolutions don't tend to end well. That's certainly true. Evolution is that's how nature works. If nature needs, of course, there are dramatic changes in nature as well. It's not that nature doesn't have revolutions. If the planet is struck by a meteor, then that's a kind of revolution. But it's evolutionary processes that will ensure life continues on the planet, or that the planet then adapts and evolves to it.
I had just a few days ago, I had a quite interesting meeting with one of my directors, with one of the general managers. I'm riding and visiting factories and working there. And he is trying to analyze whether in a pre-industrial age, so where the dinosaurs and so on, whether the volume of carbon emission was higher than today or lower and so on. And you can analyze the sediments of the earth, generally you can see how, and so on and so on. He's not a scientist, he's just digging inside. And we start to speak about the dinosaurs and the big animals, which generally all of them end their life, except of mammoths, end their life with the new ice age. And it reminds me so strong on the current situation. The dinosaurs, these are the giants which are around us. And we have been running because it was quite hot, so we have been running all these giants. But right now, the cold weather, and I don't speak about the weather, the cold time, let's say cold of change maybe, came, and these big players are not able to move because they are somehow not frozen, but much slower than before. And the only ones who survive has been the small ones, because they are very flexible, they can adapt very fast, they can dress the coat. The dinosaur can hardly dress the coat because there was nobody who will make it such a big size. And I think that again, we are following, and if we can listen to or watch the example of the nature, which told us that not the tallest tree will survive, but many small ones around. And I think already Darwin says that in some of his works about evolution. So I think we can apply exactly the same.
It's interesting. Some species were much bigger and have shrunk down in modern days because certainly at the moment it's better to be small, nimble, and fast than to be a big old dinosaur. Well, the most interesting thing is this blue whale, which is alive now, is the biggest animal which has ever lived on Earth. But it's also a remarkably peaceful animal. I wish some of the giants could learn a thing or two from the blue whale.
It will be great, because I don't think that it is, let's say, I don't think that there cannot live any giants. I think they can. We can live in harmony with those. But the only issue is that the giants try to push the giants' rules to everyone, even the small ones, but they are not applicable. And as the giants are growing, their overhead seems to grow as big as possible, which again make it much more much more hard to transfer the information from one side of the brain to the others because it's so far. It's from one continent to the others. And this is why I think it does not work so well. So, but
it's also an interesting, I've often wondered, the people who run these giant corporations, do they use their brain in a different way to us? Because it's clear that the way these corporations are behaving will destroy the planet for everybody. But they still behave the same way. Is it because the people who run them think like a corporation, that they don't bother thinking that they're human beings and that they need a world to live on? They destroy the world. I mean, it doesn't make any difference for a corporation, but it makes a lot of difference for everybody living on it.
You know, these people, generally same as politicians, they are so high on the ladder or on the top of mountain or somewhere in the office on the very, very top, they don't see the people around. You know, if they drive down with the lift, there is waiting a car with a driver, so they don't even have to drive. They don't go to the shops to buy things because someone will buy for them. So they are completely shielded from the reality, I will say. And these people frequently watch money and numbers, which are being presented in nice tables and charts and so on. And they are happy if the numbers go up. They are sad if they go down. But it's all. And I think they are generally disconnected from the reality. And they are disconnected some way from the human and humanity in general, because they are concentrating really on the numbers. And it is crazy because if they will try to eat their golden Visa card, they will find out that it does not taste well. And the second, they will probably not live too long if they will eat only the Visa cards or the money, whatever. So I think this is the reason.
And rich or poor, we all have to breathe the same air. And if the air is poisonous, if there's no food, if we don't get enough water, we can't look after each other, then they're merely the same as the rest of us. The money won't protect them for too long.
Yeah, it is so. But as I said, unfortunately, they behave like so. And then the people one level below, they fear the top, so they don't argue, they just agree. And if there are several circles which just agree, so the person on the top may think, okay, so what I feel is the reality. So they are, as I said, I think they are completely out of it. And I don't say that they cannot change, but there is no will, because the circles around, it's like protecting walls. They don't want to have a, generally they say that if they will reduce the consumption and so on, we will be poor or we will live in scarcity. The very opposite is the reality. But because of this limited eyesight, what they have, they don't understand that less can be more. I have this discussion frequently, and you know what is great? I am riding really with general managers are my drivers, and we are running in their own car in a factory, not in their own factories. We are visiting other clients' factories, and we are doing physical work in other clients' factories. And what is interesting, all these people are waking up with every single trip, with every single truck loaded. They remind on the power of touch, on the joy of working. That's very interesting. We are really, it's a hard work. I don't do a simple work. So it's really hard physical work. And these people, which usually for the first time, they visit me with tie around their neck and suit and so on the third visit latest, they have jeans, and on the fifth, they have boiler suit, because they know it's much more compatible with the work which they will do with me than anything else. But what is great to look at them and see in their eyes, to see the meaningfulness, the understanding, the sparkles of the work which they forgot. And that's so beautiful. And a few days ago, again, we have been on one trip coming back, and one of the general directors said, what we will do in 10 years when we will be 60. He is almost my age, a little younger. And I said, we will enjoy it even more, because every single time we load the truck faster than the one before, which is quite confusing. But the next day, we have a meeting with the third guy join us, and he was 65. And he was so filled with energy when he joined, because we asked him for some support of work which he really loves to do. But at the moment, he's doing, let's say, a boring paperwork. And he was so filled with energy that when we finish, the one guy says, right now, I do understand your answer from yesterday. And that's exactly what we shall do. And I think this is the best sign when you recognize that you entered evolution and not facing the next revolution.
And actually, one interesting thought from that is that if you think about the positive benefits of evolution, it is that as a species, we work best as a collective. Whereas with revolution, we don't work that well under communism or under some kind of extremism. But being in a collective, of course, is the opposite of that. It is where we look after each other, we take care of each other, we do things with common purpose, but not through force, but through realization that this is the best for everybody. And so I think collectivism is a definite sign of evolution.
And I think collectivism connected with some relation to nature. Why say that? Because in the noon discussion, there was one example that humans are not superior to animals, because some animals are even have much more in brain than the people. And the example was, but only people can open the door with a handle and window and so on. And it came to me immediately an idea. Of course, some animals can learn this, but it came to me the idea that to present our human superiority against all the rest, we start to create things which only because of our thumb, which we can do. And the animals cannot do it so easily. But it looks like that really, I don't know whether it was the intention, but we have started to create things differently than we see it in nature to prove our superiority, which is type or try of revolution approach, I will say, which fail.
I would say that if you look at the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, it's petrochemical based, whereas I'm sure most biological solutions are out there. We just have to find them, look for them, use them. We don't understand enough about enzymes. We don't know half of what's living in the oceans, which could benefit us and benefit medicine and benefit the future for everybody. But I think that nature is the great resource, it's the great supply. It's not our brilliant brains and a bunch of petrochemicals which is going to be our future. It will be working in harmony with nature.
I have seen just yesterday, I have seen a 3-year-old documentary. We can call it documentary on dandelion, so this yellow flower. And it was very interesting because it is one of a very few flowers which are on all continents except of the Arctic. And every piece you can eat. And from the very ancient times, it was used for medicine and for other purposes. For example, already in World War II, I think there has been trial because there was not enough rubber, caoutchouc. So, and in some of the types, especially in Kazakhs, dandelion, there is this white stuff inside, is generally very similar to rubber. So they try to produce it. Of course, it's much more heavier probably, or not so easy to take it out. But a few years ago, I think it was Michelin or someone of these big players started again with these trials because it's quite interesting. And there came one information which surprised me. You know, this great British green fields, there is no flower, only the grass is cut in the right size and so on. And then similar is in the front gardens of American houses and so on. And it was in 1960, something around it. And they start to do it because it was sign of being wealthy. Because I was able to pay it and cut it this way. So at the time, even the special weed killers came, which keep the grass but kill all around, all the life. And it was as a sign of wealth. And at that time, it looks like the dandelion become a weed, having the same properties, having everything, but here it become a weed.
Yeah.
Which is really the example how we are, or how we have been trying to leave the nature behind because we are better.
It's quite funny. I'm in Wuppertal right now, and Wuppertal was where Bayer made a factory to produce aspirin, and aspirin is made from the bark of willow trees, and it's, you know, it is a natural solution to a human problem. The other interesting thing about Wuppertal is it's where Engels comes from, and so from one town comes the source of a huge headache, and also the source of treating a huge headache.
It's quite interesting, and at the same time, it's great sign generally of how we behave, and we are coming back to the sign of evolution, because I think that there are very few people in the world which prefer violence and scarcity. Only the ones who generally benefit out of those. It's all the time the same. They are changing, but generally it's a special sort of people who does. But all the rest will prefer the harmony and the evolution itself. My question is, if you can consider, I use the image of wasteless world, the people do understand, but is there anything else which will, let's say, make people not only think, but act according to the evolutionary development? You know, all of our keynote, all of our speeches, recordings, and so on, help to understand. The people who watch it know it. But I was just thinking, if is there anything else? Because one of the topics which we discussed at the noon was that generally dinosaurs has huge bodies but small brains. Then came someone who has smaller body but bigger brain, let's say the humans. And right now we are in some way, so we are listening to giants, not understanding that giant has a small brains, and at the same time we try to reduce the size of our own brains by using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and so on, which will, let's say, reduce the pain of thinking.
Yeah.
It's horrible to say, but unfortunately it is so.
Yeah, or it'll at least give those that don't think an equal playing field. I think that we're rapidly approaching a crisis point. The climate is reaching a point that if we don't do something, then we can't reverse and make changes, and there will be drastic repercussions for all of mankind. And of course, the dinosaurs, the giants, they're not going to make the changes that we need to survive. And a revolution isn't the answer either, because we need to find a solution that we can all live with. Because if you think about it, the way to protect the climate is to stop the use of all fossil fuels and all meat farming now. And that is a revolution which would cause absolute disaster. So we need to evolve. We just need to evolve fast. There's nothing wrong with evolving quickly. Certainly to protect society, protect mankind, the species. But it's now we need it. And we need to really be conscious that revolution won't solve this crisis. Revolution will only make things worse. We have to evolve extremely quickly. We have to evolve our diets. We have to evolve what we eat, how we produce our food, how we distribute everything. And a wasteless world will be a major part of that evolution.
You know, I think that many generally do not understand this relation. And I think we should and we must explain it better. The issue is that today I read an article, a post on LinkedIn where former head of UN climate whatever is criticizing what is UN climate whatever doing after she left. I realized there is one interesting thing. Every of this person who live very well from very interesting salaries at the moment when they have been in these roles says not a single word against the action. As long as they left, they start to criticize. Generally, they are criticizing themselves. And I don't know whether you noticed, but a few days ago, I think it was on Friday, the European Parliament proposed a new greenwashing legislation, or let's say the countermeasures against or penalties against greenwashing. But somehow they forget themselves, because generally even Green Deal, even the name of Green Deal is already greenwashing. So it's exactly showing that the giants, as you said, will not act. They are just speaking about it. They would like everybody else to act, but they will be blocking the development themselves. So only the cutting away the dependency on the giants, and it's not difficult. It's not difficult. Will help us to overcome and generally speed up, because the evolution, it's step by step, but nobody say that you cannot run for a short time. You cannot be able to run for the whole time. You can run for 100 meters, 1,000 meters, I don't know. Then you have to walk to run again. But even if you will only walk, it's fine. If we every day do small steps, as you mentioned in one of the previous recordings, we will reach the destinations, you know, and this is exactly what I'm doing. I think the first will be to cut the dependency on data, power, and money. These three make us generally slaves of someone else. And this is why, for example, I have a car, standard combustion engine generally. I do not use it so frequently because I have my electric unicycle, but if I have to go somewhere, of course, I need to use it. But I realized that having an electric car, I have nothing against the electric engine. I enjoy it for a long time. But my device cannot be switched from somewhere else. It's me who decide. And if I read about the Tesla is updating overnight everything, and just now I think in the US they should call not only Tesla but 67 million vehicles because of the wrong airbag.
Yeah.
Tesla is calling back 1 million vehicles in China because of the brakes and so on. I don't think that it is good to have a car which someone else can say to the car what to do, because they can say, don't write. And that's very dangerous, I think.
I think that getting back to the UN, the European Union, the COP, the climate this, the climate that, in 20 years, they have achieved nothing. Not one positive step. They are blocking the changes that we need. They are hiding the truth. They are making it more complicated than it is. And like you say about data, that data and science can be used to hide anything you want. But I mean, you don't need data to look at the North Pole in the winter and see that it's not freezing over. I mean, we can see that with our own eyes. And that's how simple it is. We need to do something. And so these people that will fly around and they'll be in this committee and that committee and they'll have a great time. And like you say, they get big salaries and they're very important. And their job isn't to make change. Their job isn't to make things good for us. Their job is to protect the status quo, which is a small number of giants. And we need change. We must have change. And it has to come from the grassroots. And we have to get that change quickly, but it has to be through collectivism, through consensus, and through intelligence. There's nothing intelligent about smashing something up, but there's a lot of intelligence in reworking stuff, reusing stuff. I mean, we just simply shouldn't throw anything away, but we should use what we got to make things much more positive for everybody.
Because we have a lot of things which we can reuse. The only issue is that everything was set up, including the regulation rules, on a new product. I was quite confused about 1 year ago when I was joining some webinar in the UK generally, and there was speaking one, I think she was architect, and she asked there, do you know why there are not so many buildings repurposed in the UK, or let's say rebuild the old ones? And we said, it's too expensive. And she said, no, it is because in UK, it's higher duties if you repair a house than if you buy a new house. I didn't know about it.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
So crazy. And I think in Uruguay or some South American countries, sorry, I don't know the name at the moment. There, for example, and it was told to me by the ambassador general there is a rule that compost, so the full natural product, cannot be used on a product intended for human use, for human consumption. So the most healthier thing which you can put on the field, you cannot, because you will eat the result. And it's in the law there. As I said, I proposed to several lawyers and discussed it with quite a lot of those. Do you think you can make a country legislation from zero, from scratch? Every single one. Answer no. It's not possible. And I asked them, why not? It's not possible. There has been so much written and we have to, I said, forget about it. Write it from zero. No, it's not possible. You know, I was told exactly the same when I started my Wasteless World site. I was said, you cannot prevent waste happen on industrial scale. That was one information. The second came after when I proved that it's possible. And when I name it the industrial evolution, they told me, but Mr. Ada, human cannot start evolution. And I said, yes. Okay, sorry, but I did. So should you complain? Where should you complain? So, and that's great about the evolution. I think there is one very significant point why everyone should be happy about it. And you mentioned it at the beginning. Once you started evolution, it cannot be ended. It's not like revolution that you stop shooting and the revolution ends. No, you simply cannot end it because it's a chain of reactions, chain of actions, which you cannot control it. You can modify the direction. And when there is something wrong, of course there will be something wrong someday, but this wrong part will not survive by itself because the rest will not allow it to survive. But there must be something negative to be another positive. The balance must be there. So I am aware that there will be a little bit of waste, even in the wasteless world. But we will not take it as a standard part of our life. I think this is the most important part.
Yeah, and we're constantly developing, and what is valueless waste today may not be valueless waste in 20 years' time anyway. I mean, that's part of evolution. I think one interesting thing, I don't know if you saw last week, was again, a large Swiss conglomerate trying to pressurize the United Nations into saying that water is not a human right.
I know. I saw Klaus Schwab's speech. Unbelievable.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
But you know that already for 2 years or 3 years, the water is listed on New York Stock Exchange. It is listed there. It's the worst step which can generally happen. Luckily, not very few notice that. But I noticed that because I'm watching around. And I know it is there. And I think even Bill Gates has his shares there. This is why I say that the United Nations generally do not fulfill the function which was given to them or which was proposed at the very beginning to protect human rights generally and to prevent wars happen. I saw in analytics that since 1945, so since the beginning of existence of United Nations, there was more than 650 war conflicts all around the globe. And generally, this is the highest number in human history. So since we started organization which should prevent wars to happen, we have the highest number. And the same is for carbon emission trading. Started an operation, and again, immediately when money came in a game, we have more emissions than any time before.
Yeah.
So this is why science cannot be trusted, and we must cut away. I don't call for violence. I just call not to listen and not to follow the rules of giants.
Yeah, we have to do it ourselves.
But to set up.
Because they won't help us at all. We have to do it ourselves.
And we have to understand there should be one aim, not 180 whatever, not 17 goals, one. Because the people will not remember 117 goals. Why? Maybe 17s we will remember, but this 17 has, I think, 189 sub-goals, and they have another sub-goals. Nobody does remember. I just checked during our conversation, I just checked the IPCC report, which was issued 1 or 2 months ago. Still today, the full version is not available for download. It is something what was paid from our money through United Nations, and still we do not have access 2 months later to the full version. So there is a reason, and one of the results is don't trust giants anymore. We don't need them. Giants need us. This is the difference. The general manager in a factory, if he or she will be absent, nobody will notice. If a worker on a production line will be absent for 1 hour, everybody will notice because the key person is missing. So we have to rise up the value.
Maybe that's the key to killing giants isn't revolution, it is evolution.
I think so.
We just let them go their way, we'll go another way, and let them walk off into oblivion.
Because they are already dead. So because we have less than 1 minute time, I would like to thank you, Kevin, for the talk. Again, it was so fast that I think we started 1 minute ago, which is a good sign. But let me wish everyone have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, free, and be visible. Because if human will be visible, the giants will disappear. And we will meet again on the Google Meet.
Yeah.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.